The election the other night wasn't just a political loss, guys, for Donald Trump. It was a full-blown reckoning for him and the Republican Party, which he's dragged into chaos. You know, the GOP today is a fractured mess, with figures like Marjorie Taylor Greene parading through the media, ridiculing her own party and even the former president himself. Meanwhile, Trump is floundering, unable to, command loyalty from the very senators who once cowered before him. As he spirals over the results that make it painfully clear that the public's patience for his divisive politics has run out, Trump is once again pointing fingers instead of responsibility. Now, who's his latest target? None other than J.D. Vance, guys. The very politician he once boasted, now on the receiving end on Trump trademark tantrum and bitter insults. But before diving into all of that, if I could quickly ask you to like this video and subscribe to it. It does go a long way in supporting our work. Now, what's unfolding, guys, is less of a show, but a show of leadership and a more of a public meltdown from a man whose grip, is on his party. On reality seems to be slipping very fast. And while right-wing outlets scramble to spin the disaster as anything but a humiliation for Trump, even voices on Fox News couldn't keep up the charade for too long.
Winning in blue states.
When's the last time a Republican won in Virginia in the presidential election? 20 years.
But look, I was sitting.
When's the last time they won in New Jersey? More than that.
Kaylee,
I
was sitting at Fox a year ago when we talked about we couldn't call Virginia till very late in the night. We talked about New Jersey's shift rightward. We all talked about how young men were fleeing the Democratic Party.
And then what happened in the midterms? Democrats overperformed. It doesn't always predict.
A year ago, by the way, at the same time that the Democrats have no national party leader and the DNC is useless. Despite all of that, we beat Republicans across the country. And I will say,
was 2021 predictive of 2022?
I will say, we said here in 2024, and we said we've lost young men, we've lost Latinos. Mikey Sherrill outperformed with Latinos by huge margins in New Jersey. So all of these trends we've been talking about for a year, Republicans should not take them for granted. Last night was not just a Democratic socialist here in New York. It was Democrats, moderates, running across the country, breaking the back.
The MAGA movement keeps shifting the goalposts every time reality refused to match its fantasies, guys. Before election night, what happened is Trump loyalists swore there'd be shocking upsets in places like New Jersey, that Democrats were about to crumble. Now, instead, as you all know, what actually happened was a total rout. Democrats won by double digits across the board. The so-called red wave, Trump promised. It didn't come, did it, guys? The supposed nail, biters turned into blowouts, with candidates like Mike Sherrill absolutely demolishing their Republican opponents. Now, the same people who hyped up Trump's comeback are scrambling to pretend it wasn't a referendum on him. But it absolutely was. Voters were clear. They're tired of his chaos, his cruelty, and his failed economic policies. The key issue everywhere was affordability. A crisis Trump himself made worse with his reckless tariffs that jacked up prices and are now being challenged in the Supreme Court. And in his cruel ICE raids, and endless attacks on immigration communities, it's no wonder voters push back, and they push back hard, guys. This election was a rejection of Trumpism, clear, plain and simple. His attempts to intimidate voters and their threats, poll watchers and fear-mongering, it didn't work. As Alexandria Cortez put it, people are rising to the moment. It clearly is that. I completely agree. And that moment is leaving Donald Trump and his toxic movement way behind, guys. Take a look.
Promised, as he has in recent days, that he will give only the bare minimum to New York as a result of this election. What do you say to that?
I think he should be careful about the threats that he issues and what cities he threatens, because New York City is not a city, as we see from this electorate. These are not people, and our people are not people who easily back down, who take well to threats, and I just don't think that Americans take well to leaders who try to coerce them through hostile messaging. I think they want public servants who work for them and not against them. And I think that the results that we've seen in Georgia, in Virginia, in New Jersey, and in New York City demonstrate that.
What we're finally rising to meet this moment with clarity and determination. It might have taken the Democrats a while to get organized, way longer than it should have, in my opinion. But as Gavin Newsom put it, the party's got its mojo back. There's a new sense of purpose and momentum driven by the energy and optimism of the candidates who triumphed the other night. The fighting spirit isn't just for the next election cycle, guys. It's what is needed right now, especially as the country faces yet another crisis fueled by Trump's reckless politics. Trump knows his government shutdown is a political disaster. There's no question about it. And his furious outbursts at Republican senators shows it. While Democrats are focused on protecting people's health care and pushing for more just, forward-looking America, Trump remains obsessed with one thing, and obviously that's himself. Now, he doesn't want progress, unity or hope. He wants blind loyalty. That's why he's lashing out at his own allies, people like J.D. Vance, spiraling into yet another humiliating episode of public rage. Now, this moment isn't just about resisting Trump's destructive agenda, guys. It's about demanding something better. A politics that actually serves the people, not the ego of one man, always desperate to cling to relevance. And here's what we have on Vance, guys. Jealous Trump wants Vance scared just like rivals' lackeys. President Donald Trump spent part of his latest public ramble wishing his vice president would cower like one of Xi Jinping's deputies. The 79-year-old president veered away from boasting about his tariffs to make a glowing but strange tribute to China's leader. Trump said he wanted Vice President J.D. Vance exhibiting the same submissive tone that Chinese aides show around Xi. I put 100% tariff on China as soon as I heard it. Within 20 minutes, I put 100% tariff on China with President Xi, who's really a friend of mine as much as he could be a friend, Trump said at the American Business Forum in Miami on Wednesday. From there, he swerved into President Xi's cowering aides and setting up a punchline with Trump, admitting he wants that kind of fear in his own ranks. But at least 1.4 billion people without question. In fact, during the meeting we were there. A couple of you were there and some of you saw it. So he's here and he's got about 6 people on each side, and every one of those people, they were standing like this, he said, mimicking soldiers standing to attention. I made a comment to one of them and I got no response. I said, "Are you going to answer me?" I got no response, and President Xi didn't let them have any, Trump said. The crowd roared when he made it clear that he wanted obedience. I said, "I want my cabinet to behave like that. I'm demanding that I want them sitting up like that. Tim, just nice and straight," he said, pointing towards an aide. "I never saw posture like that. I never seen men so scared in their lives. They are the equivalent of a vice president," I said. "Are you going to answer my question?" Trump continued. He doesn't move. I said, "What's wrong with this guy?" Then came the imitation, robotic and stiff. "I will answer all questions," Trump barked, turning to Vice President J.D. Vance. "Why don't you behave like that?" J.D. doesn't behave like that. J.D. buds into a conversation. "I want to have that for at least a couple of days. Okay, we'll keep you long term, but a couple of days of that would be very, very nice." Trump's glowing appraisal of Xi comes as the elder statesman hammers Trump in the US-China trade war. A New York Times analysis found that China is offsetting its decline in exports to the US with breathtaking speed by dramatically increasing exports to dozens of other nations. At this point, you almost have to wonder what it feels like to be J.D. Vance, guys. I mean, it's reduced to a prop in Donald Trump's ongoing public humiliation rituals. I mean, that's what they really are. Watching Trump bark orders at him, berate him and treat him like an obedient servant on national television is downright pathetic. Vance, ever the career opportunist, have spent years climbing, that ladder, whatever political ladder he thinks he will get him ahead. But the tragic irony is that Trump doesn't care or respect him either. To Trump, Vance is just another disposable loyalist to boss around for an ego boost. Now, Trump's behavior is that of a deeply insecure man unraveling after yet another stinging election defeat. Despite a mountain of bad polls, he keeps, somehow deluding himself into thinking that people, adore him, that every rejection is somehow proof of his greatness. I mean, when results clearly show the opposite, he scrambles to convince himself it's not about him, tweeting frantically that voters weren't rejecting him personally. Even bragging that his 60 Minutes interview was the biggest ever, guys. I mean, come on. A desperate attempt to soothe his own fragile ego. The coping is almost comical at this point. I mean, you know, there's a way Trump demands absolute obedience from his aides, always, insisting that they sit up straight and show respect like soldiers before a dictator. You know, it's the same bizarre admiration he once showed Kim Jong-un himself. That kind of authoritarian fantasy that he reveals, how it clearly reveals how little Trump understands about real leadership. But the saddest part, guys, is that Trump's desperate craving for respect will never be fulfilled, because deep down everyone, you know, including his own followers, knows he's never actually earned it. And JD Vance, what's he got to say on all this? He's not much better, guys. He's hardly better. No one sees him as a genuine or principled person. He's a hollow opportunist, changing his tone at any point, and his beliefs depending on what benefits him the most politically at that point. So when Trump publicly mocks him, you know, it feels fitting, you know, one fraud exposing another, I guess. Meanwhile, the Democrats who triumphed last night, the other night, showed exactly what real leadership looks like. You know, strength, clarity and forward-looking message about affordability and a clear, better future. Now, candidates like Gavin Newsom and Damon Madani didn't just win against Trumpism, guys. They won for something much, much bigger, in my opinion. Their victories were, you know, they were aspirational, proof that voters are tired of fear and ego-driven politics. And the fact that these wins clearly rattled Trump only underscores how irrelevant he's becoming in the country, ready, you know, to move beyond him.
President Trump would be threatening to deploy the National Guard to the top 10 states of crime, 8 out of which are all Republican-led, but because of that party, he won't actually be doing so.
So you say you won't be intimidated. How do you stand up to it?
I think there's a number of ways. The first thing is you actually utilize the courts. You stop treating things as being law just by virtue of the fact that President Trump is saying them. You can look at the example of California, where you find the Attorney General, the Governor, and the Mayor of L.A. coming together, filing a lawsuit in opposition to the deployment of the National Guard. A federal judge found in their favor, and the Attorney General estimated that for every dollar they spent, they recovered more than $30,000 in funds that would have otherwise been seized by the federal government.
How about crime? Have you convinced Commissioner Tisch to stay on the police commissioner?
You know, I've made my decision to retain Commissioner Tisch, and I've done so because Eric Adams had stacked the upper echelons of the NYPD with incompetence and corruption. She came in, started to tackle that, deliver accountability, and reduce crime across the 5 boroughs. That is what we would build upon under a Mamdani administration, in addition to creating a Department of Community Safety to tackle the mental health and homelessness crisis head on.
You've made your decision. Has she made hers?
I am looking forward to continue to having conversations with her and to assembling a government of the best and the brightest to deliver on this agenda.
You know, last night you also said you wanted to reach out to New Yorkers who didn't vote for you. Probably highest on that list is Jewish New Yorkers. It looks like there was about a 30-point gap, according to the exit polls, between you and former Governor Cuomo. How do you convince those voters that your vision of New York includes them and your victory is not a threat to them?
You know, I was on the M57 not too long ago, which is the slowest bus in New York City, 4.9 miles an hour. And I was seated next to a woman who introduced herself to me as a speech therapist. And she told me that she was Jewish, and she said that her daughter is a huge fan and phone banks from college, and that she wasn't so sure. And I asked her to share, and she shared her thoughts about what it also means to be Jewish in New York City today, and the scourge of anti-Semitism that often worries her, that she was trying to sell her apartment. A realtor told her to put away, in her words, the Jewish books on her bookshelf. And I told her that this was unacceptable, that we were fighting for a city that didn't just protect Jewish New Yorkers, but celebrated and cherished those same New Yorkers.
This is exactly the kind of message Democrats and the country need. You know, they've been waiting for a long time, and finally it's happening. The victories, you know, are rolling in. Are proof, you know, people like Zoran are clear proof that new governors are taking office and key propositions are passing across the board. You know, it's a wave of progress. It's not a fear, you know, a reminder that hope and hard work can still, you know, overcome Trump's toxic brand of politics. And as always, guys, I appreciate you for staying with me till the end. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, stay connected, stay safe, and I'll see you on the next one.